Hello and welcome, beloveds, to another episode of Ask Dr. Mumbi. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I really do pray that you are well in all your ways and that you're moving into living life truly, beloveds, on your own terms. We really want to thank everyone that supports us on Patreon. We appreciate, love you so much for enabling us to continue to bring the awakening news to our people. I'm reporting, I know I'm saying so much in one time sentence, but I'm reporting live and direct from a beautiful island called Lamu, first thing in the morning before the sun gets too high. And I've seen all your responses, beloveds, especially when it came to the show I did about, the spells over Halloween, the common spells that are used against us. And there was so much interest in this thing of spiritual marriages and how, parents often will spiritually wed their children. You see, I think marriage is made, I don't even know how to start this. Okay, religion has made our people really, really low level spiritual beings. It's really entrapped them in a very low level of operation. And yet they engage in a lot of occult practices without knowing. And, they engage in a lot of, occult festivities without knowing. They give their energy without knowing. And so their energy is constantly being harvested on a spiritual level, like before we even get to how the world has been ordered and created physically. But, I keep telling you, beloveds, the world is mental first and foremost. So everything that you see physically has a spiritual and mental, you can call it genesis or root to it. That's why you see everyone is now a wage slave. Everyone is in this situation where everyone is ordered in the same way. It's crazy, beloveds. And I see it here because we have people from all over the world. Literally everyone is now kind of dressed the same. Even our local brothers and sisters, the islanders, are also now dressing the same. Everyone can now speak this Babylonian tongue. So it's really, really important to just be aware that there's many things that you're participating in that you don't fully understand spiritually. And marriage is one of those things. You see, marriage it's a physical contract that affects you spiritually. As above, below, as so below, as below, so beloved, above, so beloved, so above. And what happens with marriage on a spiritual level is that you two become one, literally. And you see, on a spiritual level, marriage doesn't just happen when you sign that contract. Marriage happens every time you have sexual intercourse with someone. That's when two become one. Because you're taking your being physically, your vessel, and you're connecting to another vessel on a very intimate level where your physical vessels are coming together to connect so that your spiritual energy and information and everything can intermingle and exchange. And I mean, there's science that says like every time a man has an orgasm, he releases like 5 GBs of personal information, 5 gigabytes. That's crazy. That's why there's been this whole trend recently of like, sperm retention or semen retention. And that was something that was practiced by high level yogis before. And that's what like the whole the Tantra philosophy, tantric sex, that's what that's all about. But so when two become one, spiritually you're bound together. And so you are now not operating just as yourself, but you're operating you and that person that you're spiritually married to. And sometimes, and also this thing of contracts and putting our contracts in things. But most of these spiritual marriages happen through some kind of sexual binding, which is why pedophilia is so big, beloveds. But those are stories for other days. And so many families, as I said, in Africa, They are aware that certain chosen ones are coming through their bloodlines, or certain very powerful families will always go and check, as I said, either with the local fetish priest, the marabu, whoever they'll go to, the African astrologers, to kind of tell them who is this that is returning, who is this that is coming, and what are they coming with. And because of the level of corruption, many of our parents, when they heard that we were chosen ones that were coming in with all kinds of powers and capabilities and giftings, they wanted access to those powers and giftings. And so they spiritually wed us as children. Sometimes it's a ritual that is done where maybe nothing, there's no penetration or anything physically. Sorry to get into all these details, but spiritually, they can go and they can perform a ritual with you when you're extremely young, and they literally become your husband or your wife. And your mother can become like your husband. Your father can become your husband. And so that means that from the age of 2, that's usually when they do these kind of initiations. And then they'll have to renew the initiation again when you're 7, etc., etc. From the age of 2, beloveds, they will literally marry you, bind themselves to you, and they will be operating on your power. So if you came in as a teacher, they'll all of a sudden get these teaching capabilities. If you came in as a preacher, they'll have all these pastor-like capabilities. If you came in with, as a golden child, as a blessed one, where you're literally like a money and material magnet, anything you need materially comes to you, they'll use that, and many become extremely wealthy of these golden children that are literally a gift to their homes. And so these will be the children that they'll label as the black sheep of the family. They'll constantly demean that child, constantly oppress that child, so that they can siphon off their energy. They'll make sure, they literally groom the golden child in the family to be, to lack self-confidence, to lack self-esteem, to have a lot of doubt and anxiety, and then to have this love for the parent. Some will even do separate spells, beloveds, so that they can get the child to never question the parent, to never question anything. And that child, the golden child, usually they'll live under different house rules. They'll never be allowed out of home. Like life will just, it will almost be like the parents are so much stricter with them than the other children, things like that. And they grow up in a lot of isolation. And it's not because there's anything wrong with them, but it's because their energy is being used by one of the parents who has spiritually wed them. So the parents will never ever want this child to have any kind of, boyfriend or girlfriend, or have any kind of relationship, or ever get married, because once they get with someone else, they lose the power over that child. And you see, sometimes, beloveds, if you're a golden child, all you need to know is this has happened, and it will break that. You don't have to really know the details, although Spirit will continuously reveal to you who did what. Like, they can never get away with that. And especially now, we're in the age of revelation, so no one is getting away with nothing, beloveds. So that's why they do it, and they usually do it at a certain young age. And if you look at, as I always say, go in deep into who you are, look into your astrological chart, you'll realize that we have these 7-year cycles in life. So every 7 years, it's like a new, and they also say that even scientifically, if you look at it, they say that every 7 years, like all our cells in our body renew themselves. And so we're literally like a new human being. So the same thing happens spiritually every 7 years cycle. And maybe you're on a slightly different cycle. Not everyone is on the same cycle, but what is traditionally, it's every 7 year cycle. You will shift and change. And so they will have to renew this binding every 7 year cycle. And of course, as you enter into adulthood, it becomes more tricky. I really hope this is making sense, beloveds. Leave any specific questions below. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, Africa.
Welcome back, beloveds, to Ask Dr. Mumbi. A lot of people asked me to get into this spiritual marriages and how, parents sometimes will spiritually marry their children. Many of you felt that this is something that could have happened to you just because of how you grew up. And sadly, beloveds, the ones who, and this happens in highly occult families, the ones who someone will try and spiritually marry, or the ones who will be spiritually married by their mother or their father, eventually the end goal for them is for that child to become a sacrifice. And so when they are no longer able to control you, and this is kind of where the whole MK Ultra thing came from. You see, Babylon mimics our spirituality, our spiritual technologies. And as I said, please watch the video I did on how Africa is currently being held back by the wizards and warlocks who are just involved in all kinds of nonsense. So the why would a parent spiritually marry their own child? So that they can take on those giftings that that child has come on with. They can take on those blessings and they can operate with those blessings. Those blessings will bless their life, literally. They'll make them powerful. They'll increase their money. They'll increase their popularity in society. Like literally, beloveds, the people operating in this world are narcissistic and they're vain. I should do a whole show on narcissism. They're wicked people. They're so selfish. It literally is all about them. And so you'll notice like any opportunity to get married or to have any kind of relationship with a normal relationship with the opposite sex will often be blocked. Or it will just be so challenging, or you'll find that the opposite sex isn't even attracted to you like that. Whereas all your friends have boyfriends and everything, and they're just going along with their normal life. You skip certain steps and you don't understand why. It's because you're spiritually already, you're already married and taken. So it's like they can already feel that. Beloveds, it's crazy what's going on. It's really, really crazy, just the levels of what people are doing at such a time as this. And you see, it's a lot of these spiritual marriages, which often end up in sacrifices, are what a lot of people are using to ascend to different levels of power. That is important to themselves. So they'll usually become extremely powerful people in their society, etc., etc. And I know the big question now is, I haven't even gotten too deep into it, but give me direction, because I'm not going to know textbook for this, beloveds. This is information that I am receiving as a spiritual healer and as someone who has, gone through the most. And the way these spells are broken, beloveds, is just first and foremost, you knowing that it's happened. When you know it's happened, it changes everything. And that the stronghold that it has on you, it can't work anymore. But usually when you start to, that's when you'll notice that a lot of us who have gone through this, you become spiritually rebellious, or you become a rebel in your family because you feel something is wrong. Sometimes you'll just go and you'll shout at this, the family member, the mother or father who has done this to you. You'll just find yourself shouting yourself at them, losing it at them. There's so much tension. You love them and at the same time you hate them. So to break it, beloveds. Oh yeah, and another thing I should say, this is rather sensitive, but you see, because I said a lot of it has to do with the sexual contact. So what you'll find is if you have been spiritually wed by one of your parents, you'll find that you became aware of your sexuality way before your time. Way before your time. And then you almost had like, they call them spirit husbands, but you almost had this fantasy world where you created a spiritual spouse. And as you became a teenager, maybe you got into things like masturbation way before anyone ever knew it. And it's been like a deep, dark secret that you don't share with anyone. And this isn't just something that you were doing physically to pleasure yourself, but spiritually, beloveds. I mean, the wickedness of some of these spiritual spouses is they will come and they will have sex with you in your sleep. And maybe you'll masturbate and you've gotten used to masturbating and like thinking, fantasizing. You have a particular fantasy that you always masturbate to. That sometimes can be the framework of this spell. I'm serious, beloveds. And for some, this will be too spooky for them. And if it is, this is not your channel. This is not for you. Definitely. It's, and you're very lucky you didn't have to experience this. But for those who did, and some you'll realize like your sexual urges were not in your control. And so you'd feel like, maybe you'd go out to the club and you became into this, a serial one-night stand or something like that. It's because the entity, because you see what happens is like when someone spiritually weds you, it's an entity that they're using to wed you. And that entity requires certain things from you. The parent, by now, because two of you are now one, the parent can override your decisions and make those decisions and say, oh yeah, they'll give that. Oh yeah, they'll totally transfer that over. Oh yeah, they'll do that. No problem. They'll do that. It's a sick world, beloveds. And so that entity requires your sexual energy, your emotions. That entity requires, you'll find like if this is relating to you in any way, you'll find that you've known so much sorrow in your life. You've shed so many tears. You've almost felt like you were going mad. You've even felt like something like this was happening to you. Because they use you, you've become one. So literally they're using you on a spiritual level to run their things, beloveds. And you'll feel it physically, and sometimes you'll act it out physically. And they're using that root magic, the sexual magic, to keep you rooted to them. So maybe I'll do a whole separate show on how to break it. If you wanted me to get into any, just be specific in the comments, and I'll see, I'll take it to spirit and see what I can share. But basically, beloveds, the way to get out of this is, first of all, if you've resonated with this video, go deeper, meditate on it, pray on it, ask your spirit, what am I missing? Did this happen to me? Who did this to me? Sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's an uncle or aunt, sometimes it's a sibling, sometimes it happens later on in life with an actual spouse, beloveds, where your spouse will, through this physical marriage, and then you two become one, literally, and you've even signed the contract. All your things, all your luck, all your opportunities, all your success will go down, down, down. And all of a sudden, your spouse's star will rise and they'll become this big legend. And if they were ever to leave you, that's the only way you'd know they were riding on your star, because everything of theirs will implode and collapse. So the first thing, beloveds, is to acknowledge that this has happened and to try and go deeper into your own. Nothing can be hidden from you. Your spiritual team will never hide anything from you. So go deeper into understanding exactly what has happened and what has gone on. Then once you've done that, beloveds, start to keep your distance from these people, because there's so much that they do to keep your consent. Stop eating their food. Stop accepting gifts from them. All of these things are fully loaded, beloveds. Because you can't own a human. You can only rent them. That's why slavery ended in the end. Because you can't do that. Whether you're the mother, whether you're the father, whether you're the husband, you can't take someone and chain them to you and bind them to you. One day they will know, and this first step in your liberation, and it's the most important step, is to know, to acknowledge. And so if this has resonated and this has happened, then already you have taken the first step to your freedom. And the second step now is to understand that, to remove that guiltiness and that shame, something that has probably been an underlying sore in your life that you weren't even aware of. Remove that by realizing you're a spiritual being having a human experience. And once you realize that, then look at the narrative. Why did this happen? Because I am a messianic spirit, because I am a chosen one, because I am a Christed one, because I'm coming in as a massive healer, as someone who is going to transform this world, as the first billionaire in my family. They saw that. They saw my star and they wanted that. Once you see that, then you'll start to see yourself as a survivor and not a victim. And that is so critical. And then now it's to shifting into healing. And healing means getting away from them, getting away from that environment, that circle. Because if they were doing it, they probably had many enablers around them that helped them to keep that facade. And many times family members know, but they don't say nothing, which is just so painful, beloveds. So, you start to now get away from that environment and start to create your own story. That is the greatest redemption. That is the thing, beloveds, that will give you the deepest peace, is when you start to do what you came here to do. And if this has happened to you, then that should be confirmation that you are chosen. You're here for a massive reason. And you've come in with some serious powers. And it's time for you now to claim them back. And as you take that first step, beloveds, of just knowing something like this happened to you, your power starts coming back to you. And you'll start to feel it. And if you want me to do a Road to Recovery show, let me know. I know many of you will, so I'll probably even just do it. Because there's certain things. It's a battle, beloveds. You've been enslaved. So freeing yourself is not a joke thing. And the one who has enslaved you is going to use even crazier and more tactics. And once they recognize that you're trying to get free, they may even try to take you out. Like, that's how serious this thing is. But let me leave it there for now. I'll definitely do a future show on the road, how to get out once you recognize this and you start to move away, because it's something to move away physically, but then you now need to also start to protect yourself, get your barriers up spiritually, get your spiritual barriers up, know how to protect yourself from these people, and now start calling your powers back to you. Until next time, tuko pamoja.